What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And today, I'm going to talk about the first time I stabbed somebody. It's not something I'm proud of, and it's kind of sad, actually. But I think there's lessons here for folks to learn, right? And so, yeah, it's like '89, right? I'm 11, 12 years old, and I'm walking back from the park to my grandma's house in San Francisco, right on Leland, Visitation Valley, borderline with Sunnydale Projects, the swamps. And so I'm walking home, right? Me and my homeboy were coming back from the park, and it's daytime. And laying right down on the ground is a fucking pistol, right? It's a revolver. I don't know what kind. I'm not a super expert on guns now. I know how they work, but I really wasn't at that time. And so I find a gun. It's heavy, right? It's heavier than I'd imagined it would be. And I'm like, oh man. And so obviously we're gonna keep it, right? I got a pistol now. You know what? I'm banging. I'm in the streets. I'm being reckless. I've been to juvenile hall a few times already. So, but it's my first time having a gun, and I'm like, this is dope. Now I have my own, right? Well, homeboy and I are gonna share it. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna hold on to it, right? And I think he was kind of scared, like intrigued, like, oh look, but also like, I don't know that I want to bring that home. At my house, anything goes. There's all kinds of people staying there, living all kinds of lifestyles. It is what it is. And so I go home, I take it, and I hide it in my drawer. Right? I got two drawers. And so I hide it in my drawer, and I'm like, shit, I got a pistol. And so that's it. It stays there. Um, I leave, right? The next day I leave. I'm out running around doing whatever. I come home and I see my uncle. And he goes, hey, what's this? And he shows me. I'm like, a gun, right? Whose is it? I said, it's mine. Who the fuck you get a gun? I said, I found it. I found it. And he's like, have you ever stabbed anybody? No. What the fuck you gonna do with this? I said, if I need, I'm gonna shoot somebody, right? It's what you do with a gun, you know? And he's like, you ain't shooting nobody. I said, I'll fuck you. Somebody has it coming, I'm gonna use it, right? And all the bravado and the I'm about that life that a little 11, 12-year-old kid can muster up, right? And he goes, check this out. He goes, it's mine now. I'm like, nah. He goes, no, I'm gonna hold on to it until you have felt like what it feels to get another man's blood on your hand, to see the look in their face when you put a hole in their body that God did not intend for them to have. Until you've done that, until you've really gotten up close and personal to get somebody, you haven't earned the right to have a gun. This is a shortcut. You don't get to take shortcuts when you haven't put in the work. So I'll tell you what, when you stab somebody, when you get what I'm talking about, when you really go through that, then you come back to me and we'll have a conversation. And then you can have the gun, right? But you don't get to take shortcuts from day one. You got to go put in the work. And I'm like, okay, right? So, of course, in my young mind, right? And I was not a big tough guy, I was just in that lifestyle, you know. Um, so in my mind, I'm like, all right, cool. So I go back outside and I had told, my buddies, right, little friends from the neighborhood, I had told them I was going to show them the gun, right? And so I went back in to get the gun. I don't get the gun. I go back outside. They're like, what happened? And I was like, man, let's go stab somebody, right? And they're like, what? Show us the gun. I said, nah, well, here. And I kind of explained to them a little bit. Um, but I'm like, nah, fool, my uncle found it, but he said he'll give it back to me if I stab somebody. I'm like, who you gonna stab? I was like, oh no, we're gonna go find somebody to stab. And so don't mind him stabbing anybody that day, right? The next day though, we're looking for somebody to stab, right? And so we go down to the mission district, and I'm nervous about it, right? I'm scared. I'm acting like I'm not, but I'm actually shaking a little bit, to be honest. And but this knife is burning a hole in my pocket, and all I keep telling myself is my uncle seems to think I won't do this. I'm going to show him, right? It wasn't even so much about the target. It was about proving that I'm willing to go wherever it needs to go, right? And especially at that age, this idea of, oh, you think I won't, but that was like a surefire way to make sure that I will. Uh, Not so much now. I'm older, a little bit more mindful, but at that age, yeah, don't question whether I'm about that or not, because I am. Again, I don't walk around with my chest puffed out. I didn't generally feel like I had something to prove, but if somebody questioned, then yeah, absolutely. Right now, I do have something to prove, and so that was my thing, and I wanted my gun back. I had told my homeboys I had a gun. I Now I don't, right? And so I want my gun back. So we're walking around and trying to find a target, right? Trying to find somebody to stab, and don't want to necessarily go run into the heart of rival territory because we're three little kids with a folding buck knife. You know what I mean? And so I don't want the odds to be. I don't want to go get myself hurt. I want to go hurt somebody else, right? But I'm not also trying to necessarily hurt just some homeless person or some old lady walking down the street. Like, you know, in my mind, there was a standard. There was some morals involved. In hindsight, my morals were twisted, but so I'm trying to figure it out. And we're walking, and there's these dudes skating right there, right? Skateboarding, and and we're like, okay, maybe they're not gonna beef with skaters, right? And so we keep walking, right? And we're kind of walking. I'm looking about that person. What about that person? And the homies the same thing. What about them? Nah, not him. No, not them. And we're walking, and this dude's walking, and is kind of looking crazy, right? And he's probably like 15, 16. He's older than us, but not like old, but he's a teenager, right? And it's kind of looking and checking out. He doesn't say anything, but just the look on his face, right? Like he's, who are you type shit. And so we flex on him, right? And the homeboy actually first. And the fuck you looking at, huh? Dude's like, what? What you looking at? He's like, man, y'all tripping. Words are exchanged. We jump on him, right? And we're fighting him. And they keep telling me, stab him, right? And I'm not. I'm hitting him, right? And to the point now, like he's getting stomped out. And I'm nervous and I'm sweating and I'm fucking, this is it. This is the time, right? But like short of breath, it's funny because even in telling the story, I can go back to how I felt in that moment, all kinds of anxieties, because I'm not angry. I'm not angry at this dude, really. I don't know this person. I don't got no funk with them. So I'm not defending myself. I'm not defending my neighborhood. I'm not defending my homeboy, really. Like this is all happening very fast all of a sudden. And it's really for no fucking reason, except I need to stab somebody to go get my gun back from my jackass uncle that found it and took it, right? And I'll get to that in a second. And so I pull out the knife, right? And I'm shaking. And I go to stab him like in the hip thigh area, like his leg. He's on the ground, he's getting whooped, right? And so I go to stab him. And I remember when I first go to hit him, I think I was surprised at it didn't stab him, and I think it's because I kind of jabbed, like just like went to hit him and pull back real quick. And for those that haven't stabbed somebody, and I hope that you haven't, excuse me, and if you have, I hope that you don't find yourself in a situation where you need to again. It In TV, it seems real simple. It seems real easy. It's like a knife cutting butter. And maybe because the knife wasn't that sharp or whatever, but in my experience, and probably my fear and my nerves, um, it didn't go in like that. There was resistance, right? And so it was harder than I thought. And I go to hit him again, and this time I kind of poke, and I can hear him yell, right? Ah, but it's not how I wanted it to be. And so now I just boom, and I barrel right in his thigh, you know. Um, so he's probably got like a little nick in there, but then I didn't bury the knife, but pretty damn close. Like I got a good chunk of the knife in there. And yeah, pulled it out and bleeding right away, bleeding, right? Um, and I'm like, fuck. And we run, haul ass running, leaving dude laying there. And I have the knife. I didn't even fold up the knife. I'm running down the street with the knife in my hand, right? And we bend some corners, and kind of get through, and we're in the alleyway, and I stop, and I'm like, saying like, you stabbed him, you stabbed him. See, I stabbed him, and I didn't have blood all over me, right? Nothing like that, But yeah, that's it's the first time I stabbed somebody, and so what happens? You say, so I keep the knife, right? I keep the knife. We go, Casamuni, I go home, and my uncle's not there, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and he shows up, and I was like, "Hey, I want my gun," and he looks at me kind of sideways, right? And he's loaded, and he's like, and I stabbed somebody. He goes, "Who'd you stab?" So I don't know who it was, but I stabbed him. And I was like, "What? You can ask so and so and so and so." Yeah, stabbed him. So we have a little conversation, but he's got questions. He seems like he don't really believe me. We're running through it, right? And he's like, "Okay." I said, "So I want my gun. Like I got blood on my hand. I stabbed him. I want my gun." And he's like, "Nah." I said, "What you mean, nah?" He goes, "Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't have your gun. Where's the gun?" Gonna find out. He went and sold the gun to get dope and get high, right? So this whole spiel he gave me in the beginning was not let me teach you the ways of guerra type of shit, right? It was a dope fiend move, right? It was let me talk you out your shit, which he already had it. So I mean, he didn't necessarily have to talk me out of it. He had it in his possession. I'm not gonna whoop his ass and take it back from him, right? That's not gonna happen. Um, but so he could have saved all that and been like, you burnt. Um, but I probably would have tried to find a way to get even. And so, yeah, in reality, uh, it was not some life. He taught me a life lesson, but it wasn't the lesson I thought he was trying to teach me. He just wanted the gun so that he can go get high and pull the snake move. And that kind of, as I've looked back on it, I feel burnt in the sense of, that's the first time I stabbed somebody. There would be more times moving forward. Uh, there would be more violence. There would be shootings. There would be all that stuff. And I'm sure I probably was headed down that path anyways. Um, but who knows, right? Maybe not. Maybe something could have been different. Maybe some wires would have been shifted in my head a little bit had that not happened. Uh, and so I was out there trying to prove something when there really was nobody to prove it to. I got played, and I got played so that my relative could get high. And there's some dude that's laying there with a stab wound in his thigh, um, so that he could get high, or so that I could prove something. And that's kind of the lesson in this, man. There's a few of them, but a lot of times when we're trying to prove something to somebody or supposedly prove it to ourselves, there really is nothing to prove. And we wind up doing some stupid shit in the name of proving something that has real world consequences, right? That dude, whoever he was, that kid who got booked that day, he didn't have that coming, right? And he felt the real world consequences of me feeling like I had something to prove, and I got played. And a lot of times we get played, and he got played, and I take responsibility for my part because I didn't have to go do it, of course, right? I could have taken a different route. I made the choice I made. I feel like I was encouraged to make that choice, and when I look at my kids and I look at their age and the lessons they learn and the stuff I encourage them to do, and then I look back on my life growing up and the age that that I was involved in certain things, or things happened to me, or I did things, man, it I was a kid, right? And I'm not a victim. I grew up in a time, in a world, in an environment, in a family, in an area that just a lot of us didn't have much of a normal childhood compared to a lot of other people, and there's consequences to that, and and a lot of us have experienced that in our own ways, right? So I'm not a victim, but at the same time, uh, I didn't have the best guidance, and maybe in some ways, some of that guidance helped me moving forward in life because I would find myself in situations. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch my first fight in juvenile hall video. You know, uh, I did not win that fight, right? But again, it excuse me, I learned a lesson in that, which served me well in the lifestyle that I was to lead. But I could have done without that, and sometimes I wish I didn't learn that lesson, um, because maybe I would have puckered up and stayed off the block. Maybe I wouldn't stayed out of trouble. But instead, it made me feel at home being incarcerated. It made me feel at home, um, standing up and doing stuff like that. And so, kind of similar with this, it made the next time that much easier, right? Um, and that's the problem. Is you're in a bad place when being violent towards others is easy and when it's normalized. And for a lot of us, that stuff happens at a young age, and it plants a seed. And so, anyways, man, I don't want to make this, a big long spiel, but for those that stuck around, but you were hoping for some kind of bloody, gory, wow, you stabbed 20 people, this and that story. Sorry, that ain't it. Excuse me. That's not my reality, right? But this is the first time that I stabbed somebody, and it set a tone. So help others move in excellence, man. That's what homies do. Give better advice than what I got. Give better guidance than what I got. Help yourself because you're worth it. You have to be the most important person in the world to you, and help your community because we need you, right? All of us. All right, folks. Take care.